What it do, everybody? It's your boy King Crowder back again with another edition of History You May Not Know and Things That Are Not Taught in Detail for Sure. Today's lesson, we will be going all the way to Louisiana. In Louisiana, we will be breaking down the Colfax Massacre that happened during the Reconstruction era of this country. Most people do not know that the Colfax is according to the Colfax riot that happened on Easter Sunday, April 13, 1873. This parish was a great parish where it's estimated over 200 black militiamen were murdered while surrounded by a mob of Confederate soldiers and the Ku Klux Klan. Most people do not realize that Confederate soldiers and the Ku Klux Klan were working during the Civil Rights Movement to attack black people, black Americans, and other people who were going against their beliefs. That is why the Confederate Army was and is the biggest trying group to go against American society until this day. After the contest of 1872, the governor of Louisiana and local officials, a group of white men armed with rifles and a small cannon, overthrew power of black freemen and state militia occupying the great parish courthouse in Colfax. Most of the freedmen were killed after surrendering. So think about this. They said, hey, we surrender, we're giving up. Almost 50 people that night were still murdered and executed in America's soil. The number of deaths have been varied throughout the years. They said 3 to 5 white people were killed, but almost 200 black Americans were killed. Black victims were murdered and their bodies thrown in the Red River, removed for burials in a possible mass grave. Historian Eric Fonda describes it as one of the most horrific incidents that happened and took place between the story. Federal prosecutors and convictions were persecuted as the state went to a major case of United States versus Kyrgyzstan of the 14th Amendment does not apply to black Americans at this time, even though they earned this freedom in certain states and provinces. During the late 60s, many people have been drawn to this court case and attention because it is such a horrific incident and event that happened. Let's break it down. In March 1865, James Madison Well, the governor at this time, began to place more pressure on the black codes. If you did not know, black Americans at this time brought themselves from freedom, establishing themselves with their own government, freedom, and other things going on around this time. Most people don't realize that the New Orleans Massacre shook up people all across the state of Louisiana. Louisiana had a different type of history, which we would dive more into. They had the Creole, the mulatto class, and black Americans beginning to form and grow itself. Most people do not realize that Louisiana is the growth of the Jim Crow movement. That's where it was started and founded in the Plessy v. Ferguson decision. Louisiana by itself, y'all, is ground zero to the racial influx inside of this country. Let's keep going on. President Andrew Jackson blamed the massacre on the Republican Party. Remember, black Americans were mostly Republicans around this time due to their freedoms, their alignment, and their spirituality. The 14th Amendment, if you do not know, look it up in American history. Rights under the law, natural citizens, everyone deserves honor, protection, and registration rights. They all earned it through the Civil War movement and earned themselves free citizen, free men decided to work upon this country. By April of 1868, biracial coalition in Louisiana had elected a majority state legislature that were black people. This was the first time that this happened, and it really shocked the whites around this time. President Johnson, a Democratic, prevented the Republican government of Louisiana from entering the state militia or pursuing his rights, known as the Knights of White Camilla, their version of the Ku Klux Klan. Think about it. If you look around its history, you begin to see the Red River and many things began to go as working class black Americans worked their area. They had their own plantation, they inherited land, they cultivated it and worked themselves. What drove most of these people crazy is that they were voting. They were mobilizing themselves. They had people to protect their land and protect their freedoms. They voted in their leaders. They voted who were going against what they had. The reason why this is such a big deal, people say that voting, even to this day, is not a big deal. Then why is it constantly being attacked and tarnished? The horrific thing that most people do not realize is that they use the Ku Klux Klan, the government terrorist organization, to enforce rights among the newly freed citizens of this country. The Klan burned crosses, attacked black residents all the way from Arkansas, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, all across this country, infusing injustice. The Klan would position them and basically say, if you vote, if you do this act, we will kill you and your family. They lynched, they mobbed, they bombed, they shot, and they burned crosses as a symbol of, if you do this, we will harm you. Governor Richard tried to remain balanced in Louisiana as he appointed some other people from the black unions that were veterans. Most people do not realize that the 6th Infantry Regime of the Louisiana State Militia began a new unit to uphold the new lives. Many people were born slaves in Charleston, South Carolina, but earned themselves freedoms as they built them up. The election in Louisiana of 1872 was so controversial due to blacks voting and getting and their leaders in the process. So they got their leadership in. They got black leadership, black ownership, and black entrepreneurs of their grant. And when they got the leadership to start working and building upon their certain parts of town, that is when the Colfax conflict began to rise. The fearful Democrats were literally so fearful that the parish would be overthrown by black citizens, making their county work for them. That is when they recruited other whites and other people to join the effort. Literally, white moms began to pressure themselves and go towards the state capitol where the black union workers were. You must understand, the massacre occurred when the direction of the sheriff began to end the riot. They gathered a white militia group where they gained Robert Wynn and Catlett parishes. They did not move upon the courthouse until Easter Sunday. Think about how cruel that is. When over 500 white men, mostly by horseback and rifles, went upon the courthouse and they tried to capture them. The black Americans defended themselves, shot back, some fled, some went against that group. Towards the aftermath, it was too many whites that overpowered them. The black Americans submitted, gave themselves up. And even though they submitted and gave themselves up, the governor and a new police force decided to massacre them with mostly headshots to their body and throwing their body in the wilderness. This tragedy happened when these black citizens knew that they had to overturn themselves, but it was such a horrific act that it scarred the community of Colfax County. Many people were killed, murdered, and lynched on government land buildings. Think about this, y'all. All of this attack happened on the courthouse steps. Think about the courthouse where you live and thinking about an open shooting happening like you were in the Wild Wild West. A U.S. attorney named James Beckwith, the U.S. attorney of Louisiana, got the telegraph and got the memo of what was going on in this community. The national newspaper in Boston, Chicago, had to write up and indict these men that were pursuing crimes against humanity. The Civil Rights Act and the 14th Amendment protected these terrorist groups such as the Klan and white radicalists against acts happening this way. It was said that a trial was going to be set in place and that people were going to be held accountable. The sad thing is, we barely have tragedies that people know against the white leagues. They buried the act, buried in legal forms and legal characteristics. Many people were never, ever held accountable. And if you ask the average high school student in the state of Louisiana about this situation, many have no idea about the Colfax Massacre, why it happened, and how this tragedy affected that area. Let's go back and renew the attention one more time. This happened in the late 19th century when they were showing growth and mass unity in the former enslavement, building themselves up and creating a new identity. The Black Power structure wanted to emphasize political rights and political freedoms that is earned after earning this freedom with the installment of the 14th Amendment. The true tragedy occurred that they never got to taste or feel their American freedom, and their stories are still untold in Louisiana school systems, Texas school system, and if you ask the average American citizen, hey, I will challenge you to ask the average HBCU graduate about the Colfax Massacre. They cannot tell you how this act of political, social, and racial cleansing happened and where it happened in this country. It's a tragedy, but we must look at our history so we do not repeat it or do not renew it in the future. I hope you learned something, number one, about this horrific incident so we know our past and know not to go over it again. It's your boy, King Crowder, back again. I just love diving into history, y'all. It's one of my favorite subjects, but I think it is so impactful that we learn these type of things. So for one, we do not repeat them. And for two, we learn from them and make sure we hold people accountable to prevent these issues from ever occurring again. It's your boy checking out. Until next time, peace.